November 2013. Warner Brothers studio lot. Bradley Cooper sits alone in a screening room watching footage of himself, and he can't breathe. The footage is from American Sniper. He's supposed to be Chris Kyle, Navy SEAL, the most lethal sniper in American military history. But all he sees on screen is Bradley Cooper pretending. And the pretending is killing him. His phone rings. It's Clint Eastwood. And what Clint says in the next 3 minutes doesn't just save the film, it saves Bradley Cooper from himself. To understand what happens in that phone call, you need to understand the pressure Bradley is under. He's been preparing for this role for 8 months. He gained 40 pounds of muscle. He trained with Navy SEALs. He learned to shoot, to move, to think like a warrior. He met with Chris Kyle's widow, Taya, multiple times. Listened to her describe her husband, the man behind the uniform, the soldier who came home from war but never really came home. And every time Bradley looks at Taya, he sees the weight of what he's carrying. This isn't just another role. This is someone's husband, someone's father, a real man who died 3 years ago, murdered by the veteran he was trying to help. And if Bradley gets this wrong, if he fails to honor Chris Kyle's memory, he's not just disappointing an audience. He's betraying a widow and her children. The preparation has been brutal. Bradley has worked with acting coaches, military advisors, dialect specialists. He's studied footage of Chris Kyle for hundreds of hours. He's read his autobiography 3 times. He's done everything you're supposed to do when you're preparing for a major role. But something isn't working, and Bradley can feel it. When they started filming 2 weeks ago, Bradley thought he was ready. He knew the accent. He knew the mannerisms. He knew how Chris Kyle walked, talked, held a rifle. He had all the technical pieces in place. But when the cameras rolled, when he tried to become Chris Kyle, something felt hollow. He was performing, not inhabiting. And there's a difference, a massive difference. And everyone can see it. Clint Eastwood can see it. He doesn't say anything. That's not how Clint works. He doesn't yell or criticize or make actors feel small. He just watches. With those eyes that have seen everything, that have been in this business for 60 years, that know the difference between acting and truth. And when Clint watches Bradley, he sees a talented actor trying too hard, thinking too much, trapped inside his own head. The studio can see it too. They've invested $60 million in this film. They know it's politically controversial. The Iraq War is still divisive. Chris Kyle himself was a polarizing figure. Some people call him a hero. Others call him a killer. The film could go either way. It could be a massive success or a public relations disaster. And right now, with Bradley's performance not quite landing, it's leaning toward disaster. Bradley knows all of this. He lies awake at night thinking about it, replaying scenes in his head, wondering what's missing. Why can't he find Chris Kyle? Why does it feel like he's wearing someone else's skin instead of inhabiting it? What is he doing wrong? On this particular morning, they were supposed to film a crucial scene. Chris Kyle at home with his wife. He's been back from deployment for 2 weeks. He's sitting at the dinner table with his family. His wife is talking to him. His kids are laughing. But Chris isn't there. Not really. He's somewhere else. Back in Iraq. Back on a rooftop. Back in the war that won't let him go. It's a scene about PTSD, about the invisible wounds that soldiers carry home, about the impossibility of being present when part of you is still at war. It's one of the most important scenes in the film. And Bradley couldn't do it. He tried 5 takes. Each one was professional, competent, but hollow. He was acting trauma instead of living it. And everyone could tell. After the 5th take, Clint called for a break. The crew dispersed. Bradley walked off set to his trailer. He sat in the dark for 20 minutes, and then he did something actors almost never do. He called the director, not to make excuses, not to ask for advice, just to say the truth. I can't do this. I'm not good enough. I'm failing Chris Kyle. I'm failing Taya. I'm failing you. Clint listened without interrupting. When Bradley finished, there was a long silence. Then Clint said something Bradley didn't expect. Come to the screening room. I want to show you something. Don't tell anyone. Just come. So Bradley drove to the screening room on the Warner Brothers lot, a small private theater where directors review footage. Clint was already there. Sitting in the back row, the lights were dim, the screen was blank. Bradley sat down next to him. Neither of them spoke for a moment. Then Clint said, "I'm going to show you something I wasn't planning to show you yet. Some footage from the first 2 weeks. I want you to watch it. Don't analyze it. Just watch." The footage began playing. It was the scene they shot on day 3. Chris Kyle in Iraq, on a rooftop, looking through a scope at a woman walking toward American soldiers. She's reaching under her robe. Chris has seconds to decide. Is she a civilian, or is she carrying a bomb? If he shoots and he's wrong, he kills an innocent woman. If he doesn't shoot and he's wrong, American soldiers die. Bradley watched himself on screen, watched Chris Kyle's face as he made the impossible choice. Watched the moment his finger pulled the trigger, watched the aftermath, the weight in his eyes, the knowledge that he just killed a woman. And whether she was a threat or not, she's dead now, and he's the one who made that call. Bradley watched, and something happened. He stopped seeing himself, stopped seeing Bradley Cooper on a soundstage, and saw Chris Kyle. Not perfectly, not completely, but something real, something true, a man carrying weight that no human being should have to carry, and doing it anyway because someone has to. When the footage ended, Clint didn't turn on the lights. He just sat there. Finally, Bradley spoke. "I didn't feel like that when we were filming. I was so in my head, so focused on getting it right. I didn't feel anything." Clint nodded. "I know, that's the problem. You're trying to play Chris Kyle, and you can't play him. He's too big, too complicated, too broken. You have to stop trying to become him and start letting him become you." Bradley didn't understand. "What does that mean?" "It means you're carrying everything alone, all the preparation, all the research, all the pressure. You're holding it inside and trying to control it, trying to manufacture the performance. But that's not how truth works. Truth isn't manufactured. It's released. You have to stop controlling and start trusting." "But I don't know how to do that." "Yes, you do. You did it in that scene. You just didn't realize it because you were too busy thinking about whether you were doing it right. But when I watch this footage, I see a man who stopped thinking and started feeling. And that's the man we need, not the one who knows all the technical details, the one who feels the weight of those details." Bradley sat in the darkness of the screening room. And something shifted. He realized what Clint was telling him. He'd been approaching Chris Kyle as a problem to solve, a character to construct. And that's why it felt hollow, because Chris Kyle wasn't a construction. He was a man who lived and breathed and bled and broke. And the only way to honor him was to stop trying to control the performance and start living inside the uncertainty, the fear, the weight. But what if I go too far? What if I lose myself in it? Then I'll pull you back. That's my job. Your job is to go as deep as you need to go. My job is to make sure you don't drown. That's what directors do, not the mediocre ones, the great ones. They protect their actors while asking them to do impossible things. They sat together for another hour. Clint didn't lecture, didn't give Bradley a list of acting techniques. He just talked about Chris Kyle, about what Taya had told him, about the letters Chris wrote from Iraq, about the way he talked about his team, about the guilt he carried for every soldier who died while he was watching, about the impossible mathematics of war. If I save 10 American lives by killing 1 Iraqi, is that right? If I save 100 by killing 10, where's the line? When does the math stop making sense and you're just a killer? Clint told Bradley about meeting veterans who served with Chris, how they talked about him with reverence, but also with sadness, because they knew what it cost him. They saw the way he changed, the way killing eats at you, even when it's necessary, especially when it's necessary. Because if you don't feel anything when you take a life, you're not human anymore. And if you do feel something, it destroys you piece by piece. And Bradley listened, really listened, not trying to memorize details for the performance, just absorbing the humanity, the complexity, the impossibility of Chris Kyle's life. And somewhere in that conversation, Bradley stopped trying to play Chris Kyle and started grieving for him, for the man who did everything right and still came home broken, for the widow who lost her husband twice, once to war, once to murder, for the children who would grow up without their father. When they finished talking, Clint said one more thing. "Tomorrow, when we go back on set, I want you to forget everything we talked about. Don't try to use it. Don't think about it. Just show up and be present. Trust that it's inside you now. Trust that when the camera rolls, you'll know what to do. And if you don't, we'll find it together. But you have to stop trying to control it. You have to let it breathe." Bradley went home that night and didn't sleep. But for the first time in weeks, the insomnia wasn't from anxiety. It was from something else, a kind of clarity. He lay in bed and thought about Chris Kyle, not as a character, as a person, a real person who loved his wife, who missed his kids when he was deployed, who believed he was doing the right thing even when it tore him apart, who came home and tried to help other broken soldiers and died for it. The next morning, Bradley arrived on set early. Clint was already there. They didn't talk, just nodded to each other. The crew reset the dinner scene, the one Bradley couldn't get right the day before. Clint called action. And this time, Bradley didn't think. He just existed. He sat at the table with his family. His wife was talking. His kids were laughing. And he couldn't hear them. Not really, because part of him was still in Iraq, still on that rooftop, still making impossible choices that no one should have to make. And the look on Bradley's face broke everyone's heart. Because it wasn't acting anymore. It was truth. Raw, painful, necessary truth. The truth that soldiers carry home and never talk about. The truth that destroys marriages and ends lives. The truth that Chris Kyle lived with every day until he didn't. Clint didn't call cut. He let the camera run, let the moment breathe, let Bradley stay in that place as long as he needed to. And when the scene finally ended, when Bradley came back to himself, he looked at Clint. And Clint just nodded. That's it. That's the truth. Now we can make the film. The rest of production was different. Bradley stopped trying to control the performance, stopped worrying about whether he was getting it right. He just showed up every day and trusted that Chris Kyle was inside him now, in his body, in his breathing, in the way he moved through the world. And it worked. Not perfectly, not without struggle. But it worked. There were still difficult days. Days when Bradley went too deep and Clint had to pull him back. Days when the weight of the role felt crushing. Days when Bradley would finish a scene and walk to his trailer and cry for 20 minutes because he couldn't separate himself from the pain he was channeling. But Clint was always there, always watching, always ready to step in when Bradley needed him. And there were breakthroughs, moments when everything clicked, and the performance transcended acting and became something else entirely. The scene where Chris calls Taya from Iraq and tells her he's coming home, but doesn't sound like he means it. The scene where he's home on leave and can't relax because his body is still in combat mode. The scene where he finally admits to Taya that he doesn't know how to be normal anymore, that he doesn't think he can ever be normal again. Those scenes weren't written. Not really. The words were there. But what Bradley brought to them came from someplace deeper, from the conversation in the screening room, from Clint's trust, from the decision to stop controlling and start feeling. And everyone on set could tell the difference. The crew worked in silence after those scenes, not because they were directed to, because they were witnessing something rare, something sacred, an actor giving everything, and a director protecting him while he did. American Sniper wrapped production 12 weeks later. The final cut was brutal, unflinching. It didn't glorify war. It showed the cost, the moral complexity, the impossible choices. And at the center was Bradley Cooper delivering the performance of his life. Not because he mastered the technical details, but because he stopped trying to master anything and let himself be broken open by the truth of who Chris Kyle was. The film premiered in November 2014. The reaction was immediate and divided. Some people called it propaganda. Others called it a masterpiece. The political debates raged. Was Chris Kyle a hero or a killer? Should we celebrate soldiers or question the wars they fight? But Taya Kyle saw something different. She watched the film and saw her husband, Not the legend, not the symbol. The man, complicated, flawed, heroic, broken, real. After the screening, she found Bradley, hugged him, whispered, "Thank you. You brought him back, just for a little while." And Bradley broke down. All the months of preparation, all the wait, all the fear that he wasn't good enough. It released, because the only person whose opinion really mattered had just told him he got it right. Clint stood in the back of the theater, watching, not celebrating, just witnessing, because that's what he does. He witnesses. He creates space for truth. He protects his actors while asking them to do impossible things. And he never takes credit. He just makes sure the work speaks for itself. In February 2015, American Sniper received 6 Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture and Best Actor. It became the highest-grossing war film in history. Over $540 million worldwide. But the numbers didn't matter to Clint. What mattered was that people saw Chris Kyle as human, that the conversation about soldiers and war and PTSD became more nuanced, more honest, that maybe somewhere a veteran watched the film and felt seen, felt understood, felt less alone. Years later, a journalist asked Bradley about that phone call, about what Clint said that changed everything. Bradley thought for a long moment. Then he said, "He told me to stop trying to play Chris Kyle and start letting Chris Kyle live through me, to stop controlling and start trusting, to stop protecting myself and start feeling everything, even the parts that hurt. And then he promised he wouldn't let me drown, that if I went too deep, he'd pull me back." And he did, every time. He kept me safe while asking me to be unsafe. That's what great directors do. "What did Clint teach you about acting?" the journalist asked. Bradley's answer was immediate. "That truth is more important than technique, that honoring someone's memory means showing all of them, not just the parts that are easy to love. That when you tell someone's story, you owe them everything, your time, your vulnerability, your willingness to break yourself open, and that even when it's too much, even when you think you can't do it, you keep going, because they're worth it." That's who Clint Eastwood is, not the cowboy, not the action star, the director who makes one phone call and changes everything, who sits with his actors in dark screening rooms and shows them what they're capable of, who doesn't yell or demand or control, who just creates space for truth, who protects people while asking them to be brave, who understands that great art requires sacrifice but never asks for sacrifice without offering support. On that November afternoon in 2013, Bradley Cooper sat in a screening room watching footage of himself and couldn't breathe. And Clint Eastwood made one phone call that saved American Sniper, not with advice, not with technique, with trust, with permission to stop controlling, with the promise that if Bradley went as deep as he needed to go, Clint would be there to pull him back. And that trust changed everything. It transformed a performance from hollow to human. It turned a controversial film into an honest conversation about war and its cost. It gave Taya Kyle her husband back, even if just for 2 hours on screen. It showed millions of people that soldiers aren't symbols. They're human beings asked to do impossible things and then expected to come home and pretend it didn't change them. The call lasted 3 minutes, but the impact will last forever, because that's what Clint Eastwood does. He doesn't make speeches. He doesn't grandstand. He makes one call, says the right thing at the right time, creates space for people to find their truth, and then he gets out of the way and lets them do the impossible. That's the legacy. Not just the films, not just the awards, the moments, the phone calls, the conversations in dark screening rooms, the trust extended to actors who are drowning, the promise kept to pull them back, the understanding that when you ask someone to channel real pain, real trauma, real loss, you have a responsibility to protect them. Bradley Cooper will never forget that call, never forget the way Clint saw him struggling and didn't judge, didn't criticize, just showed him a path forward, a way to honor Chris Kyle without losing himself, a way to tell the truth without being destroyed by it. And when Bradley needed that path most, when he was ready to give up, Clint was there. That's Clint Eastwood at 84 years old, still working, still creating space for truth, still protecting his actors, still understanding that the greatest act of direction is knowing when to speak and when to listen, when to push and when to pull back, when to let someone struggle and when to step in and save them. On a Warner Brothers soundstage, Bradley Cooper couldn't breathe, and Clint Eastwood made one call that gave him air, not by solving the problem, by showing Bradley he already had the solution inside him, that he just needed permission to trust it, to stop controlling, to stop protecting himself, to break open and let Chris Kyle live through him, even if it hurt, especially if it hurt. Because Chris Kyle's story deserved that, deserved someone willing to carry his weight, to feel his pain, to honor his complexity without reducing him to a symbol. And Bradley did that, because Clint gave him permission, because Clint promised to keep him safe, because Clint understood that the only way to tell true stories is to create space for people to find truth in themselves. That phone call saved American Sniper, but more than that, it saved Bradley Cooper from drowning in his own expectations. It showed him what's possible when you stop trying to control art and start trusting it, when you stop protecting yourself and start serving the story. When you have a director who understands that actors are human beings, not tools, that they need support, not just direction, that the best performances come not from technique, but from trust. Clint Eastwood made one call, 3 minutes, and everything changed. The film, the performance, the conversation about soldiers and war and sacrifice, all because an 84-year-old director understood something most people never learn, that sometimes the greatest thing you can do for someone is show them what they're capable of, give them permission to be brave, promise to catch them if they fall, and then let them fly. That's who Clint Eastwood is. That's what he does. One call at a time, one actor at a time, one film at a time, creating space for truth, protecting people who are brave enough to seek it, understanding that great art isn't about control, it's about trust. And when you give people that trust, when you promise to keep them safe while they do impossible things, they'll give you everything. They'll break themselves open. They'll find truth you didn't know existed. They'll honor the dead by refusing to turn them into symbols. Bradley Cooper found Chris Kyle that day, not in a screening room, in himself. Because Clint Eastwood made one call and showed him where to look, and that call will echo for as long as people watch American Sniper. As long as they see Bradley Cooper's performance and recognize truth when they see it. As long as they remember that behind every great performance is someone who created space for it, someone who protected the actor while asking them to be vulnerable, someone who understood that art requires sacrifice but never demands it without offering support. That's the legacy. One call, 3 minutes. Everything changed, and Bradley Cooper will never forget it. If this story moved you, there are more like it. Quiet moments, difficult decisions, the way great directors protect their actors, the way Clint Eastwood creates space for truth. Stay for the next one.